President Obama has nominated federal appeals court judge Sonia Sotomayor to the Supreme Court, putting her in line to become the country's first Hispanic justice. The 54-year-old Sotomayor is the daughter of Puerto Rican parents who was raised in a public housing project in the Bronx. A graduate of Princeton and Yale, she served as a prosecutor, corporate litigator, and federal district judge before joining the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in New York in 1998. If confirmed to the Supreme Court, she would become the nation's 111th justice and the third woman to hold a seat on the court. President Obama introduced her in the East Room of the White House yesterday morning and hailed her compelling life story and her experience on the bench.
Over a distinguished career that spans 3 decades, Judge Sotomayor has worked at almost every level of our judicial system, providing her with a depth of experience and a breadth of perspective that will be invaluable as a Supreme Court justice. It's a measure of her qualities and her qualifications that Judge Sotomayor was nominated to the U.S. District Court by a Republican president, George H.W. Bush, and promoted to the Federal Court of Appeals by a Democrat, Bill Clinton. Walking in the door, she would bring more experience on the bench and more varied experience on the bench than anyone currently serving on the United States Supreme Court had when they were appointed.
Judge Sotomayor thanked the president for what she called the most humbling honor of my life and went on to speak about her background and experience.
Although I grew up in very modest and challenging circumstances, I consider my life to be immeasurably rich. I was raised in a Bronx public housing project, but studied at 2 of the nation's finest universities. I did work as an assistant district attorney, prosecuting violent crimes that devastate our communities. But then I joined a private law firm and worked with international corporations doing business in the United States. I have had the privilege of serving as a federal district court trial judge and am now serving as a federal appellate circuit court judge. This wealth of experiences, personal and professional, have helped me appreciate the variety of perspectives that present themselves in every case that I hear. It has helped me to understand, respect, and respond to the concerns and arguments of all litigants who appear before me, as well as to the views of my colleagues on the bench. I strive never to forget the real-world consequences of my decisions on individuals, businesses, and government.
If confirmed, Judge Sotomayor would replace Justice David Souter, who was considered a reliable member of the court's liberal wing. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said Tuesday the Senate would not be a rubber stamp to confirm Sotomayor and said Republicans would, quote, examine her record to ensure she understands that the role of a jurist in our democracy is to apply the law even-handedly despite their own feelings or personal or political preferences. President Obama tapped New York Senator Chuck Schumer to lead the confirmation effort. White House officials told the Washington Post they hope to confirm Sotomayor by August 7th.
To discuss Sotomayor's nomination, we're joined by a roundtable panel of guests. Marjorie Cohn is the president of the National Lawyers Guild, a professor at Thomas Jefferson School of Law. She joins us from San Diego. On the phone from Washington, D.C., Tom Goldstein, an attorney who founded the popular SCOTUS blog that's devoted to the Supreme Court. Joining us here in our Firehouse studio is Cesar Perales, president and general counsel of Latino Justice, formerly known as the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund. Sonia Sotomayor served for many years on the group's board. And on the phone with us from Puerto Rico is Juan Manuel Garcia-Passalacqua, an independent political analyst who publishes a weekly political analysis column for El Vocero. He's a graduate of Harvard Law School, a former professor at Yale University. He knows Judge Sotomayor personally, and according to Juan, who just discovered her Yale Review piece, he is extensively quoted in her piece in the Yale Law Review.
Yes, and welcome to all of you. I'd like to start with Juan Manuel Garcia-Passalacqua. Your reaction to the nomination by President Obama.
My hair stands. My hair stands because I have been, as you know, attentive to the relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States for years, 50 years to be exact, and I never expected, that the diaspora would produce the first Hispanic Puerto Rican judge in the Supreme Court of the United States. What to me is the crucial element of what we are today celebrating is that for the first time the census issued last summer said that there were more Puerto Ricans in the United States than in Puerto Rico. Now, the diaspora has produced a Supreme Court judge of the United States of America. And now, a bill has been filed in Congress by 90 members of the House of Representatives, finally solving the relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States and providing the opportunity of rejecting colonialism in the ballot next year. So, again, I must confess that it is one of those days in one of those years in which the whole relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States is being transformed before our own eyes.
How did you come to know Judge Sotomayor?
It's fascinating, that story, because we have been friends in the judiciary because, again, I have been part of the political analysis of the relationship, and the judiciary is part of the relationship. And both Judge Sotomayor and Judge Jose Cabranes were the two Puerto Ricans that, since 10 years ago, have been seen as the potential candidates, the potential Puerto Rican candidates to the Supreme Court of the United States. So it was in that sense that that our relationship developed, and it was in that sense that I guess you have discovered I'm being quoted by her in some instances.
I'd also like to bring in Cesar Perales, who also knows Judge Sotomayor personally. And interestingly, Cesar, in the long biography today of Judge Sotomayor that was published by the New York Times, one of the things that they do not mention is that for 11 years, she served on the board of directors of the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund from 1980 until 1991, when the first President Bush named her to the federal bench. You were the director at the time. Could you talk about your experiences with her as your boss, in effect, at the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund?
Well, the one thing one immediately learns about Sonia Sotomayor is that she is very smart. She joined the board when she was about, I think about 26, 27 years old. She was the youngest member we had, and we brought her on because she was very interested in getting young Latinos to enter the legal profession, and that's one of our mission. Part of our mission. But Sonia immediately impressed all of us, as certainly held her own against the older members on the board. She's very smart. She's insightful. And to me, who was the guy that had to carry out the wishes of the board, she was very practical in her approach to issues. I can't cite particular anecdotes, which I'm continually asked about, but I can just tell you that my own sense when I was at board meetings was that Sonia was going to be on my side because she'd know that the effects of what her decisions would be, and that she was very careful about that. And I think these are attributes that are going to make a big difference on the Supreme Court. This is a woman that, while we spend a great deal of time talking about her intellect and about her youth and everything she's overcome, but she is very much a practical person. And I think that makes a big difference when you've got the Supreme Court making decisions that affect the lives of everybody in this country.
Your reaction when you heard that President Obama had nominated her to the Supreme Court?
I was ecstatic, and I can tell you, hearing and watching the ceremony, tears welled up in my eyes. As a macho Latino, I shouldn't admit this, but there were many of us standing around this television set in our little kitchen in our office, and there were people bawling. I mean, people who knew her. She's just a regular person, and to see her there, and to see her mother, see the reaction of everybody in that room, I said to myself, Barack Obama likes to make history. He's doing it again today. This is the most important appointment ever made to a Hispanic in this country. And we are very, very pleased. And I think it's going to, you will see that during the confirmation process, because I think if she gets a particularly hard time, people are going, in our community, are going to react very negatively.